All right, welcome back to the Dirt Road. I'm here with Rick.
That's Michael over there. What's up, baby?
This is our lovely Dirt Road farm back here behind you, hidden in New York City. You'll never find it. All right, so we are back talking about the debate. And this is part 2. We're going to go through the transcript, not the entire thing, because we'd be here forever, and we would all probably be bored to tears. But we are going to go through the debate, the transcript, and kind of hit the key points and the highlights and discuss what we think was good, what was bad, all that good stuff.
So we also were going to pay attention to the questions the moderators asked. Seeing it in print may give a different vibe, and we'll see how unfair they really were, where they were unfair, and how Trump dealt with it. And listen, I mean, it's not for us to decide who won or lost the debate. I think nowadays, anyway, I mean, if whoever you're voting for, you're going to think won, right?
Yeah, that's pretty much what's happened already, right? The people on the Democrat side right now are claiming Kamala won this thing, and people on the Trump side are claiming Trump won this thing, and I think they both kind of, sucked air, honestly. It was
But I got very mad at Trump's response, I guess, to Kamala Harris's answer to the first question, because I thought he blew a big opportunity right off the bat. It was a layup for him. So David Muir, who everybody's saying was so pro Kamala, the very first question was, he said, "So let's get started. I want to begin tonight with the issue voters repeatedly say is their number one issue, and that is the economy and cost of living in this country. Vice President Harris, you and President Trump," he meant to say President Biden, "were elected 4 years ago, and your opponent on the stage here tonight often asks his supporters, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? When it comes to the economy, do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago?" So that's a good question of her.
Actually, that's a really great question. That was a very solid question, yeah.
Now, I'm not going to read her whole answer, but she didn't answer the question.
No, she just talked around it.
She talked around it because obviously she can't answer that, right? Because
then she'd be like burying her own campaign.
Right. The answer is obviously we're not better off. I mean, subjectively, we're not better off. I mean, objectively, we're not better off.
No, you could look at the numbers, all the inflation numbers, everything else.
But she went into a whole thing about how she's going to create a quote unquote opportunity economy. That's her new phrase, right?
Yeah, I heard that.
And the $50,000 tax deduction for small businesses and how much she loves small businesses and whatever. And look, at least she was prepared with numbers and so forth, but she never answered the question.
No.
So then David Muir says, "President Trump, I'll give you 2 minutes to respond." Right then and there, what should he have said?
Right then and there, he should have started hitting the numbers, inflation, everything else. The numbers, how high is it now costing you? How much more is it costing you for groceries, gas, for everything else?
Well, I thought something different. I thought that was the perfect time for him to repeat the line he laid on Joe Biden. He could have said, "I don't know what she just said, and I don't think she knows what she just said." But she didn't answer the question. Remember when he said that to Biden?
Yes. No, that would have been a good response. Yeah.
And I was shouting that at the TV. I mean, and I understand he's, I'm not in front of 80 million people, it's easier for me to think. Right. But my God, that was a layup for him, Mike.
There was, we're going to go through the transcript, obviously, but there were a lot of points like that where I was like, how'd you miss that? How'd you miss that? How did you not... see that opportunity for what it was. Like, you could drive a car through that. But imagine if he would have repeated that line he said to Biden. I mean, right off the bat, he would have won the debate right there. Yeah.
Because everybody would have laughed, too, right?
Yeah, because it would have shut the whole thing down.
I don't know what she just said. I don't think she knows what she said, but she didn't answer the question. But he went into, again, we can't read his whole thing, but he said, first of all, I have no sales tax. Because she said that a Trump national sales tax, that's what she was trying to get the tariffs. Right? Now, listen, Republicans do this too because they refer to inflation as a tax.
It's a tax that nobody voted for.
So this is just a common political thing, so she's referring to it. He did bring up, however, that they left some of those tariffs in place, which was great.
Well, yeah, they did, because, I mean, he says it's like billions and billions of dollars. They're not going to give it up. They need that money.
So he did say that. So he did have a pretty good answer, and, he gave some numbers, and he said, then he went into immigration again, and he laid that line that I just don't understand with the whole thing that they're taking black jobs and Hispanic jobs. Like, they're taking jobs. I mean, again, he digs himself into these holes, which I don't understand.
Why. I get what you're saying, but I think that's because they talk about, like, the media, especially on both sides, and this is across the board. They speak a lot about jobs in, like, segments of the community. So they talk about, like, the black and Hispanic, communities and their jobs numbers, or jobs numbers overall, things like that. But so I get what he's trying to do. He's kind of trying to showcase, like, look, I've been better for the black community, Hispanic community, which historically he was as president.
Then say that, right? Then just say that. when they say, what are you doing for the black community, say, listen, I think black people have the same aspirations and hopes that everybody has. They want safe neighborhoods, they want good schools for their kids, and they want opportunities to succeed. And if I'm president, I will make sure that everybody has those opportunities. Something like that. In other
words...
But instead of saying black jobs, we talked about this in one of our earlier videos, just phrase it differently. Say jobs held by blacks, Hispanics, things like that. Because when you say black jobs, it almost does sound like, there are specific jobs that are
just
for
black people,
you know?
No, I agree. I think it sounds awful. And, I mean, realistically, we should just be talking about jobs, period. And if he wanted to go about jobs, he could have easily have just said, listen, we have record numbers of American workers being, laid off, fired, whatever, unemployed, while all the so-called job growth that the Biden regime, and Harris is part of that, are bringing are jobs that are being taken by non-U.S. citizens.
Something like that. Yeah.
The majority, the overwhelming majority is taken by non-U.S.
Phrase
citizens.
it like that. But, but
there's a lot of ways you could have gone with it, yeah.
But the question that David Muir asked right off the bat,
that was a great question.
It wasn't a gotcha question, but it was a good, tough question for her. And I'm sure the folks over at NBC were furious and saying the media is against her and blah, blah, blah.
And I'm sure, absolutely. Listen, I think it was a great question, that first question. It was. I thought it was a great question.
So then he went back to her, David Muir, and said to Trump, we're going to get to immigration and the border security later on in the debate, but I'd like to get Vice President Harris to respond on the economy here. So he was throwing it back at her. He did a good job.
Giving her a second chance to kind of come back and bite at the apple, but listen, he's kind of trying to get her to answer the question, like actually answer the question, not the political speech.
So I thought he did a good job there. I didn't see anything biased about that or anything. And
no, that was a solid
he let
question.
Each of them respond. And that conversation went on and on. And then David Muir's second question, he aimed at Trump. And he said, Mr. President, I do want to drill down on something that you both brought up. The vice president brought up your tariffs. You responded and let us drill down on this because your plan is what she calls essentially a national sales tax. Your proposal calls for tariffs, as you pointed out here, on foreign products across the board. So he, the moderator, who was so biased, said, no, these are tariffs. It's not a sales tax, right? So again, I'm reading right from it. I said, your proposal calls for tariffs, as you pointed out here, on foreign imports across the board. You recently said you might double your plan, imposing tariffs of 20% on goods coming into the country. As you know, many economists say that with tariffs at that level, costs are then passed on to the consumer. Vice President Harris has argued that it'll mean higher prices on food, gas, clothing, medication, etc. Do you believe Americans can afford higher prices on tariffs? Now, I don't like the way that was phrased because the moderator there is saying basically that it's a fact, that it's going to cost higher.
But it's not.
But it wasn't a terrible question. He was just asking Trump to
it's maybe
defend his policy.
It's not phrased maybe the best way, but it is pretty much to a specific point that he could have easily have come in and said, listen, and it gives him a good chance to kind of highlight his plan and say, listen, here's what we're going to do, here's why we're going to do it, and here's why it's not going to raise prices.
Right.
So
I don't see anything biased about that or anything, And then Trump answered. He said the ones that are going to have the higher prices are China, and they've been ripping us off for years, and I'm the only. So he answered, and he said we're going to take in billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars, and then he said a good answer. He said I had no inflation, virtually no inflation, and they had the highest inflation perhaps in the history of the country. So that was a good answer by Trump, right? He's saying you're saying that these tariffs are going to raise prices. He says, but I had those tariffs when I was president.
Right,
and I didn't have inflation.
It worked, and the economy was very strong.
Right. So that was a good answer by him, I thought.
I thought so too. Yeah.
And then he says, they've destroyed the economy, and all you have to do is look at a poll. Polls 80, 85, 90% say Trump's economy was better than theirs, and so forth. All right,
not inaccurate, and I understand it. He's kind of highlighting his support.
So that was fine. And then David Muir says to Harris, Vice President Harris, I do want to ask for your response. And you heard what the president said there, because the Biden administration did keep a number of the Trump tariffs. How do you respond? What is biased about that?
See, I don't think that was biased.
Nothing.
I think most of the problem with the moderator stuff
but he held her accountable, Mike.
Well, no, he was trying to get her to answer. He was.
No, he specifically said, Madam Vice President, your administration kept these tariffs.
He asked her, but she didn't answer. But I mean, he did ask her. But I think the problem, the problem I had, and from what I'm hearing from a lot of people, the majority of the problem they had was the fact checking him and not fact checking her, things like that.
Well, we're gonna definitely get to those because there were. I mean, that's inarguable. He did fact check.
But I was kind of like, I was impressed with the first couple of questions of the debate because it was actually very well. They were pretty good questions. That question was kind of like, it wasn't murder great, but it was still a good question though.
They were fine, I thought. And then Harris went into the economy because of COVID and blah blah blah, and then
blaming him for everything,
right? Which she should do. That's what she's supposed to do, right?
Well, that's her job in a debate, of course.
And then David Muir just said, President Trump, I'll let you respond. And then Trump, said, I don't know if this is true or not, but he said, first of all, they bought all their chips from Taiwan. We hardly make chips anymore. I think he is right about that.
He is.
Because I think that's the only reason we really give a shit if China's going to invade Taiwan. Is
because they're the main chip manufacturer for the world.
If they produced potato chips rather than computer chips, I'm sure we would not be talking about Taiwan at all. About them, So, and then Trump tried to, of course, get it back on immigration, which I think is smart, right? Because that's an issue.
He's trying to stick to the hot button issues, right?
Yeah. But... yeah, all right. Anyway, so we'll move on. And then David Muir said, thank you, President Trump, and then handed it over to Linsey Davis. So Linsey Davis then gave the abortion question. And this we mentioned in our last video. This is where I think Trump missed the big opportunity.
Yeah, he definitely missed this one.
Here's why I didn't like the way Linsey Davis phrases. But again, I don't find these things as major as you and many other people do. I find them annoying, but I just don't think it's that bad. So she went on, Linsey Davis, and framed her question, and I hate this because moderators do this all the time. They give like a little soliloquy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Run for president if you want to give a soliloquy.
This is not your platform. Just ask a stupid question and get the hell out of the way. Yeah.
So I don't even want to waste their time reading the whole thing, but the problem was at the end, she was basically asking him, you said that you're proud of Roe v. Wade being overturned, and there's a new ban in Florida up for a vote in your home state of Florida. You surprised many saying that you're against the 6-week abortion ban. So she was saying, which is true, he has flip-flopped on abortion, and it's pissed me off, and I brought it up. So she was basically saying, you flip-flopped on abortion here many times, right?
Yeah, because he was very, very hard on it, and then now he kind of came back to the middle more. And
so I thought that was fine, but then I didn't like the way she said at the end. The question should have been, can you explain why your position has changed, or has your position changed?
Sure,
but her question, the actual question was, therefore, why should women trust you?
Well, because again, that was a baited hook for him, right? That's what that was.
Right. So that that was an unfair way of phrasing it, in my opinion, for the moderator.
It was a bad question.
But again, is it a big deal? No. His answer was, well, the reason I'm doing the vote. That vote, meaning how he's going to vote on the Florida ban, is because the plan is, as you know, the vote is they have abortion in the 9th month. They even have, and you can look at the governor of West Virginia, the previous governor of West Virginia, he fucked that up, it's Virginia.
Yeah.
Not the current governor, was doing an excellent job, but the governor before, he said a baby will be born and they will decide what to do with the baby. In other words, execute the baby.
And that's happened actually more than once.
I know it, but that's not the answer.
No, I don't think it's the answer at all either.
It's not. He had a chance there to defend, his pro-life positions and throw it right back on Harris. And forget the 5 times that might have happened where a baby was born while being aborted or something.
I think that's actually
actually talk about late-term abortion in the 6th, 7th, and 8th month. How
sick is that, right?
It is. And he did bring that up. But again, people got all mad at this question. I don't think it was a terrible question because
it was worded really awfully. And she baited the hook. She made it really. It was a really
why
awful
should
question.
We trust you?
But for him, it was still a good opportunity to showcase what his pro-life position is and why he feels that way.
And I thought it was a fair question because he has flip-flopped on abortion.
Well, no, he has. He was very, very, very hard on it, and then he kind of came back to the middle again, which okay. If that's where you are, that's where you are. I get it. I kind of agree with the Reagan standard also. I think there are certain cases where it should be allowed.
Okay. That's fine, but, it was his job to answer that question. And this is where Linsey Davis, I think, pissed a lot of people off, including me, because that's where she fact-checked him. But again, he walked into it. There's no reason to bring up that. It was like we were saying before with the thing about maybe these immigrants might be eating dogs in Ohio or something.
It was a distraction. It wasn't really necessary.
It's not, because it's a little anecdotal thing that doesn't really deal with the big question, right?
Right, because you're not gaining anybody in the middle, right? The
Right.
people in the middle aren't you've already got the pro-life group. Like, you've got them. They're coming for you. They're gonna be with you. They're not going anywhere.
But Lindsey Davis fact-checked and said there is no state in this country where it's legal to kill a baby after it's born. Madam Vice President, I want to get your response to President Trump. So again, I don't like the fact-check thing, but I don't know what these laws are in these states, and Trump should have been prepared, and he should have had that, but that law isn't in effect in Virginia right now, right?
There's another state, I think Minnesota actually had like 4 or 5 instances where babies were actually born alive and they were left to die on the table. And there are multiple states right now that have laws on the books where if the abortion procedure is done and the baby, for whatever reason, happens to be born alive, they'll leave it on the table and let it expire.
Okay, I mean,
there are some examples of that actually happening, but it's only a handful. There's only a handful of examples that we know of right now.
But he should have.
But those laws are in the books, and he should have known that. He should be able to speak to that directly.
Yes, exactly. Or, like I said, stop with the anecdotal things, the things that happen very rarely,
and speak
deal
about
with
just the realities.
Issues.
Yeah, just a broad stroke. Even a broad stroke on that would have been better than what we got.
Even he could have just thrown it back at her and said, when do you think a life begins? Is it in the 3rd month? Is it in the 4th month? Is it in the 5th month? Whatever.
They can't answer that. And
so she accused him of wanting to sign an abortion ban, and he answered. He said, and he did a Reagan line, which was pretty cool. He says, "Well, there she goes again."
Yeah.
Said it's a lie. I'm not signing a ban, and there's no reason to sign a ban because we got what everybody wanted. Democrats, Republicans, every other legal scholar wanted to bring back. That is not true. That every legal scholar. I mean, most legal scholars thought that Roe versus Wade was a poorly.
Well, I mean, it was like mental gymnastics to get to the decision they made, but
exactly.
But there were plenty of legal scholars on the left that wanted to keep the federal.
But either way, those sorts of things, those exaggerations, it doesn't bother me when she does it. It doesn't bother me when he do it. That's what. That's what politicians
you expect
do.
That, yeah, you kind of expect some of that, absolutely.
So Lindsey Davis followed up and said, "Would you veto a national abortion ban if it came to your desk?" And he says, "Well, I won't have to because again, there's 2 things. Number one, she'll go back to Congress. She'll never get the vote." I mean, this was just word salad. It didn't make any sense.
I understand what he was trying to say, but he just stumbled all over it.
Let me finish his quote here. It says, "I won't have to because again, 2 things. Number one, she said she'll go back to the Congress. She'll never get the vote. It's impossible for her to get the vote, especially now with the 50-50, essentially 50-50. She's not going to get the vote. She can't get the vote. She won't even come close to it. So it's just talk. You know what it reminds me of? When they say they were going to get student loans terminated, and it ended up being a total catastrophe. And he just rambled on. I can't even read the whole thing because we're going to bore the shit out of them. But
yeah.
Mike, I said this in our last video, so I don't want to hammer it.
Yeah.
All he had to do is say, "Yeah, I'll veto it because I think it's unconstitutional because the Dobbs decision threw it back to the state." Next question, Lindsay.
Just smack her down with it.
That's it. But instead, he goes on to this rambling thing.
If he had said that, he could have come back, and at the end, he could have just said, but let's get to the more important question. When do you think a life begins? When is it okay to kill it?
Yes. Now,
he could have put it right back on her.
Lindsey Davis would not let this go. And this is where, again, I think this is where...
smelled blood in the water, and she wanted to try and trip him up some more.
But again, she should leave that up to Harris. Let Harris deal with that.
She shouldn't be dealing with it. In the last video, I said this, they carried a lot of water for Harris. They were very much on her team, and they carried a lot of water, which is what I think pissed off a lot of people.
I don't know if it's that they're on her team as much as they obviously despise him. You know what I mean?
Lindsey Davis introduced Harris and her husband. They're best friends. They're very close, personally. So I think Lindsey, David Muir probably was a little bit less carrying water, but he was still carrying water with all his nonsense fact checks.
I didn't think
they
he was
were
that
definitely
bad.
carrying water. I mean, he had his moments, but
she did have the right to do this. She did follow up and say, but could I just get a yes or no? Because your running mate J.D. Vance said that you would veto it if it came to your desk. That is true. I don't think that was a terribly biased. She said,
well, she's going based upon what Vance has said already.
Right.
So yeah,
she said, can you give me a yes or no? Would you veto it or not? And
it's a fair question.
Because if I were her, I would have gotten even more bad with him, and I would have said, "We're not talking about student loans. I asked you, would you veto an abortion ban?"
I think that's a fair question.
Yeah, I think it's a very fair question.
It's based on something his running mate said. It's a fair question.
And then he threw J.D. Vance under the bus. He says, "Well, I never discussed it with J.D. in all fairness." I mean, he basically called J.D. Vance a liar, which is kind of interesting. But I guess that's it. So then Lindsey Davis threw it back at Harris and said, Vice President Harris, I want to give you time to respond, but I do want to ask, would you support, and again, this is fair, would you support any restrictions on a woman's right to an abortion? That is not carrying water for Kamala Harris. She is asking her, well, do you want any restrictions, or are you okay with no restrictions? Now,
no, that question's fair, but they did carry a lot of water for her. The fact checks and a few of the things, they carried water.
We'll get to them, but right now, other than the way that Lindsey Davis phrased it, why should we trust you on abortion, I don't see anything wrong with these questions at all. Not when you read them. I think
the tone and the way they're directed also kind of has some... I mean, the transcript is transcript, but when you look at the totality of it and the tone that she took and everything else she did, it was very adversarial.
But not
again,
yet. We're not there yet, Mike, because
they were adversarial. She was adversarial from the start. You could see it. You could see it in her face, hear it in her voice.
But Mike, what was wrong with anything she said so far, other than why should we trust you question?
A lot of things. I mean, the question was phrased badly. And the question was phrased badly.
Which
the fact check right at the beginning.
Well, hold on. Which one are you talking about?
The abortion question. That when she did the abortion question, she phrased it badly at the very end. Why should we trust you?
Why should we? Yes, I agree with you on that.
Come on.
But I said, other than that, where have you seen anything so glaringly bad here?
The fact check, and like I said, the tone of her voice.
Which fact check?
The fact check before that with the abortion thing. There's nowhere in the country where that's not true. That's not true. But she had to throw her own statement in there.
But I don't know if that's true or not.
Donald Trump didn't answer. I'm telling you, it's not true.
But then why didn't Donald Trump say that?
I don't know. That's on him. But again, it's a missed opportunity.
I mean, how many states have this law that you're allowed to abort a baby at the moment of birth?
New York does. Quite a few.
Well, I mean, you know that. I don't know that. I'll take your word for it, but
it's over a dozen. I know that. I think it's maybe 18 or 20.
Shouldn't have he been armed with that?
Yeah,
information.
Absolutely. There's a lot of things he should have said, and a lot of things he should have. I mean, we both agree he flubbed.
Yeah, but I'm really more focusing on the questions here, really, than his answers, because again, Lindsey Davis went right back to Harris and threw it back at her and said, "Well, are there any restrictions you would support?"
Right. And we all know Harris is going to be.
So she danced around the question, right? She said, "I absolutely."
She danced around everyone.
She did, but again, that's
politics.
It's politics, and it's Trump's job to hold her to account there.
Exactly.
Not the debate moderators. Lindsey Davis tried to then continue with something, and that's when Trump intervened and said, "Excuse me, I have to respond. It's another lie. It's another lie. I've been a leader on IVF fertilization." We talked about this
in vitro fertilization. Yeah.
So we talked
a big push lately.
Yeah, I know, but we talked about this in our last video. Like, if he's gonna support this, he's got to phrase it as a pro-family thing, right? I mean, he can't just.
Well, I mean, you got. There's a very easy case to be made for that, right? Very easy case to be made for it, and it's the fact that we have this declining birth rate in the Western world, right? Across the board, Japan, us, everywhere. In the Western world, you're seeing these very, very, steep declines in the birth rates, in families.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you're promoting that, saying, listen, we have these declining birth rates, and we're promoting this because we want families, we want to keep our country strong, we want to keep our country growing, that's a pretty clear, easy way to kind of promote that without all the word salad that he threw in there, and he injected it in the wrong place.
And neither one of us are in favor of $1 billion mandate for.
No.
So we're not defending it. We're just saying if Trump is going to go out there and say this, at least phrase it as like Mike just said, that
that's the reasoning behind it.
He could say we're the party of life. We want to expand life. They're the party of death.
What you want the answer to be is about policy. Why are you pushing this policy? What is this going to do? But we didn't get any of that.
But Trump did try. Right at the end, he said, and the other thing is, you should ask. He's talking to the moderator. You should ask, will she allow abortion in the 8th month, 9th month, 7th month? And Kamala Harris
that was a good part of his response.
And this is where the moderators lost control, because then Kamala Harris says, come on, and Trump says, well, would you do that? Why don't you ask her that question? Why don't you ask? And then Kamala Harris says, why don't you answer the question, would you veto? She was right. I mean, neither one of them
answered the question.
So they were both right going at each other there.
Because neither one was actually committing to anything.
Exactly.
Neither one was committing. Yeah.
So I'm not going to read the whole thing, but they went back and forth with each other. At some point, the moderators should have stepped in there and said,
you shut both mics and said enough.
Right. Exactly. But they didn't. And then Lindsey Davis just said, President Trump, thank you. So then the next question was from David Muir. He says, we're now going to turn to immigration and border security. Now, again, this is towards, I think this is towards Harris. He says, We know it's an issue that's important to Republicans and Democrats, voters across the board in this country.
Sure.
Vice President Harris, you were tasked by President Biden with getting to the root causes of immigration from Central America. We know that illegal border crossings reached a record high in the Biden administration. This past June, President Biden imposed a tough new asylum restriction. We know the numbers have dropped since then, but my question tonight is, why did the administration wait until 6 months before the election? And would you have done anything different from President Biden on this? Is that not a good, tough question for her?
No, it's a great question.
That's a great question.
Because he brought in the actual, what they actually did, what the actual policy of her administration.
Exactly.
And even the time frame, we're like, hey, why are you so late in the game now doing this?
Right. So everybody...
good question. Very solid, hard question.
Great
Absolutely.
question. Now, of course, she didn't answer it, but
She went right around it.
But she did what he did the entire debate, which is avoid. So
dance around it, yeah.
So then she says, she goes into her, she had this one in the can, obviously. She says, to the answer to that question, she says, I'm the only person on this stage who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations for the trafficking of guns. Excuse me. Let me say that the United States Congress, including some of the most conservative members, came up with a border security bill, and then this is where I know what the moderator is going to ask next. So she got into the bill that...
The border security bill.
The
that
border
was a complete
security
hot
bill.
mess garbage
bill.
So
she avoided the question, and Trump did the same thing with his questions and everything. But again, we're focusing on the moderators here. David Muir's question to her was
That was
great.
a good question. No,
He
there were
held
some
her to
solid
account.
questions.
Why did you wait? Why'd you wait till 6 months before an election to do this? And what would you, Vice President Harris, have done differently than President Biden? That is a tough question. That's a good question.
I think so.
So
It
anyway,
kind of goes to her. Listen, she's trying to distance herself from Biden, right? She's trying to make herself out to be the new version of
and
whatever.
there was her opportunity to say what she would have done differently.
Exactly.
But
And she
instead,
danced right around it.
She went on to the things, and then that's when she started ripping apart his rallies. Remember that?
Oh, yeah, and that was the most ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even understand what that was even about. Like, people leave his rallies early. You're going to pay to bust him in. And he got her on that one. He did. He nailed her with that one.
He did. But, I mean, it's just such a... It's a stupid argument on both of their parts.
It was just nonsense. There was no reason for any of it. Like, who cares?
But she had that one in the can, and this was her way of... But again, she's avoiding... and again, we're talking about the moderator. The moderator's question was great.
I thought it was a great question.
She got into all of this nonsense, and then about his rallies and everything, and then David Muir just
it was juvenile. It was like, come on, really, just what we're doing now? Come on, stop.
And then David Muir says, President Trump, on that point, I want to get your response. And then Trump, instead of going into something important, right? He says, where are we here? I'm sorry, I lost my place. I apologize. So David Muir continued, just let me ask though, why did you, and this was terrible, why did you try to kill that bill and successfully so? So when Harris brought up that bill, David Muir says to him, let me just ask you though, to President Trump, why did you try to kill that bill and successfully so? Hold on a second. That would have put thousands of additional, that's like saying, so why do you beat your wife, Mike? Listen. Why do you beat your wife? We have no proof that Donald Trump killed that bill. There's no proof of that. So this, I agree with you here. This was nasty by David Muir. He said, let me ask you, why did you try to kill that bill and successfully so?
That bill was hot garbage from jump. It was hot garbage.
But how does President Trump answer? He doesn't say what you said, but maybe a little bit more politically, right? And talk about the ins and outs of the bill and say, I didn't kill the bill. I was against it for these reasons. No. He had his little feelings hurt about her response to his rallies. So instead of taking this 2 minutes and actually responding and dealing with immigration, which is his strong point, right? This is his strong point. This is where he could nail her. And the moderator gave a question that gives him an opportunity. So instead, President Trump decides that he's going to take this opportunity to defend his rallies because his feelings were hurt.
And this was the exchange. As I said, it's very juvenile.
She got him. She planned on it. She had that whole line about the people leaving the rallies in the can. She
stole his thunder off the
She put it there, and he fell for the bait. So he says, first let me respond to the rallies. She said people start leaving. People don't even go to her rallies. There's no reason to go. And people that do go, she's bussing them in and paying them to be there and then showing them in a different light and blah, 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 blah.
But you don't need
and all the way, and then he goes into the thing about the one they're eating the dogs and the cats and just incoherent
and it just
stuff.
all goes off the cliff right
so,
there.
I don't like the way David Muir phrased that question, Mike, because he did say why do you beat your wife?
It was very poorly phrased. It was very badly phrased, and
But what did Trump do? He went in. My feelings are hurt about my rallies. Well, your rallies are you don't even get people at your rallies. Juvenile shit.
Exactly.
Exactly. Juvenile shit.
Unnecessary and a golden missed opportunity right there.
Right.
To completely put the Border Czar thing right back on her shoulders. To put her on the defensive and put the Border Czar stuff right back on her shoulders.
He could have just said, David, I'll give my time back to her if she'll promise to answer the question.
That'd be epic. That would be a
Something
great
like
response.
That, right?
So
just let her answer the question. What would she have done differently? But then David Muir did the thing that annoyed everybody about where he said, he fact checked and said, I reached out to the city manager, which means he prepared this fact check.
Yeah, he went ahead of time to make sure that he could have something to come back at him with.
Right. But again, how does Trump respond?
And he's juvenile.
Trump responds, well, I've seen it on television.
Yeah, and that was just an awful
Just
response.
such stupidity.
Listen, it's a documented thing, right? There were some instances. Now, how much of that instance is it being blown out of proportion? Most likely it is, honestly. If we're being honest, it most likely is being blown out of proportion.
Right. Or it may not have happened, or it did happen, or whatever.
There's documented instances with the police department there, so we know it did happen. Some of these things did happen. But that being said, is it being probably blown out of proportion? Absolutely, because people want to hate on the immigrants.
Is that the reason to close the border? Because some came in and ate a dog? No.
If it was my dog, maybe.
That's where we were talking before, that he could have just brought up the numbers about how cities' budgets are being busted.
I think that's kind of, to me, like that's reminiscent. Like let's say you're talking about symptoms of a disease you have, and one of the symptoms is makes my pinky hurt, right? Does it matter? Sure. Is it the most important thing at all? Absolutely not. And it's not something that should have ever been in this debate. It just wasn't the place for it at all.
No. And again, defending his rallies, that is exactly what she was trying to do. She had that whole
because she knew the question was going to be his grand slam, and she derailed him.
Right. So she waited for that time where she could put it in,
strategically
and she did a great job, and he fell for the bait.
Good. He did. He
took my rallies are bigger than your rallies. Yeah. Great.
Hook, line, and sinker, man, and she derailed his response, and that's exactly what it's meant to do. So it was good strategy on her part in that way.
Yeah,
listen, it worked without a doubt. She actually prepared, and you can see it. You could see that she was prepared. She didn't really answer any questions. She gave all the political responses. She danced around everything, but she was prepared, and you could tell that she spent the time preparing to be able to do that, to kind of drop those hooks when she needed to kind of derail his responses or get under his skin. Mm-hmm. He should have been much more prepared for that and much more aware of the fact that they were going to try and do that, and that he's not facing a dementia patient again, but rather somebody who is an attorney. Listen, she might not be the brightest bulb, but she's still an attorney. She's still trained in that discipline of being able to cross-examine.
She's not a dumb woman. She knows how to break a witness. Right.
She
was a prosecutor.
She's a prosecutor. She knows how to talk to somebody on the stand and cross-examine and do all those things. So
she got him. She got him right where she got him right where she knew it was going to hurt. The rallies.
Yeah, she dropped those baits and he took them, and
it was terrible because he wasted time doing that, and I thought he looked. You're a 78-year-old man. My party's better than yours. More people came to my house than your house.
Yeah, come on,
just nonsense.
Get off the nonsense and just talk to policy.
But here's where I thought Trump's second best moment was. I thought his best moment was I don't know if you agree or not. His closing.
His closing was his best moment.
Yeah, I thought that was his best moment.
He got better at the end. It seemed like as he went through it, he kind of, I guess, recomposed himself somewhat and got somewhat better, and the closing was definitely his best moment.
But this is where I thought his second best moment was, because then when David Muir threw it back to Harris, again, she didn't feel like answering the question either. So that's when she went into how many Republicans have endorsed her, and even his former chief of staff, a 4-star general, said he had contempt for the Constitution.
Yeah, she kept bringing up people.
Right, but that's where Trump had a great answer. He said, they're bitter. Because I fire them.
That was a great answer. Because I fired them. Yep, right. That was a great answer.
And he said, you fire no one. He said they never fired one person. They didn't even fire anybody having to do with Afghanistan and the 13 people who were killed.
This was a good response.
I thought that was his best moment, second best moment.
That was a great response. Yeah, he was on his game then. That's actually where I got hopeful again, where I was like, okay, maybe we're back. Maybe we're actually getting back in this fight now. Maybe we're actually going to pull this thing out of the fire.
Yeah.
So that response I liked it. I thought he came back very succinctly, very clearly, and put it right back on her.
I really did. I thought that was one of the moments where I think that was Trump supporters could applaud.
Absolutely, that was a great moment. It was a great response. It was a very honest response, very true response, and it clearly put it back on her.
Yeah. But so far, again, I'm focusing here
On the moderators.
On the
questions.
moderators.
Right, and their questions.
I'm sorry, I just don't see anything that terrible. I saw a couple of things that were bad so far, but we got more to go. So then David Muir said, and again, this was something that I heard people complaining about on TV this morning, and I didn't see anything wrong with this. He said to Trump, he said, you also said, that you would do this deportation thing, and it would be the biggest program ever, and you might use the military, and I'm paraphrasing it because it was a long one.
Yeah,
but the question then said, the question part was, take us through this. What does this look like? Will the authorities be going door to door in this country? Now, I don't have a problem with that question. He's saying...
I thought it was a good question. How are you actually going to do this? How are you going to implement this policy?
I agree.
It was a good question.
I agree.
And it was a great opportunity for him to kind of showcase, look, here's how we're going to get things done. Here's how we're realistically going to take the country and put it back where it belongs and get rid of these people who should not be here.
Right. And he would not answer the question.
No, he danced around it.
Yeah. Because I don't think he really does have a plan, because guess what? As much as you and I might like it, you're not deporting 11 million people. It can't happen.
Well,
I mean, I wish it could.
It'd be a Herculean effort.
Oh, my God. I don't know how.
I think he'll... Listen, I do think he will start the biggest deportation operations because he said he would. I think he will do it.
Oh, I think he will too. But he had an opportunity there to explain how.
But right, but he does. He didn't go into like details of a plan.
He didn't go into any part of the plan.
This is something that he should have had in his back pocket, right?
Yes,
this is his wheelhouse. This is bread and butter. He should have had like a bullet point plan. Okay, first we're going to mobilize this. Then we're going to beef up this. Then we're going to shut down the border. Then we're going to, and then you can go to like 5 or 6 points real quick on what you would do to kind of overall big picture kind of do stuff with that. And he would have looked very smart, very strong, and it would have come off very, very clear. But he didn't. He talked around it. He just talked around it. I was annoyed with that. That one annoyed me because I was like, it's a good question. It's a really solid, honest question.
The problem people had with the question, though, is that because he said, what would this look like? Would you be going door to door? So
as though like we're rounding people up like the Gestapo.
Exactly.
And that's what he tried to make it out to be like. Like they're going to use the Gestapo tactics or whatever.
Maybe.
When realistically, the Justice Department now under this regime is using that, not our side.
But the question overall was fair. You said you wanted to do something.
It's a good question.
Can you please explain to us how you're going to do it?
Here's my thing. We talked about this in the last video, and I definitely want to bring it up in this one.
What's that?
The moderators, whether they're hostile or not, is irrelevant because the question is still just a question, and you as a candidate should be able to answer the question. So even if the moderator is hostile and they're making the question hostile, you could take the question, reform it in your mind, and answer it in a way that you understand it to be, more honest or more in line with what you want to get out. So he has opportunities with every question, no matter how hostile they are, to give a really good, measured, honest, articulate response, and he just keeps missing that opportunity.
Yeah,
frustrated the hell out of me.
And David Muir then followed up again. It was arrogant, but he said, and these numbers are true, right? The FBI did say violent crime is coming down in the country, so David Muir decided he's going to throw that fact out there.
Yep, and he got checked by Trump on it.
Yeah, he did. Trump said, but again, Trump turned it back to him, right? He said. Excuse me, the FBI, they were defrauding statements. I don't know that they're defrauding statements. I think I would have liked to see him just say, I'm talking about illegal immigrant crime. I'm not talking about crime overall. We're talking about crime from illegal immigrants because just let me tell you one thing. Your nephew asked me when we were eating dinner, I don't know, maybe a month ago or whatever, and there was an illegal immigrant who murdered somebody and it was on TV. And he said to me, when he saw me and my wife getting upset about it, he said, how is it any different than if an American citizen murders somebody? And I said, well, the result is no different. It's a dead person. I said, but one was avoidable.
100% avoidable.
That's the difference.
Yeah, it didn't have to happen. I mean,
right. It's not that
much more avoidable than, say, like the other type of murder you see.
Exactly. So it's not that illegal immigrants commit crimes more than other people or not. I don't know what the stats are, but what I do know is that every crime committed by an illegal immigrant was an avoidable crime because they should have been stopped from coming in. Yeah. And most of them are recidivists.
Yeah.
They're not even deported after they commit their first crime.
Man, they're released right back into the community.
Yeah.
So the reason that he said there was defrauded statistics from the FBI, and he's not wrong. He's not wrong about this.
Why?
No. So what the FBI did since Biden took office, right? What they did, Department of Justice and the FBI. They stopped taking the crime statistics from the major cities. New York City, Chicago, Detroit, all these big major cities with very, very high crime rates right now. Those numbers stopped being included in the FBI statistical data for violent crime in America because they wanted to make the numbers look like they were going down. and it's documented and it's proven. It's you can look at the FBI reports and see that those numbers are missing from there. They're categorized separately, because somehow that makes sense to them. Basically, it's just a numbers game, right? But I mean, look, politicians on both sides do this. They play games with numbers to make themselves look better and whatever they're doing.
Right. Yeah.
But this is just one example of Biden's regime actually playing games with crime numbers to try and make it look different. But the numbers from like L.A., New York, some Chicago, some like really major violent cities are excluded from those overall crime statistic numbers. So violent crime actually is way up right now in the country. Even doesn't matter about immigrant crime, non-immigrant crime, just overall violent crime in the U.S. right now is way up.
Yeah, and you know better than I do as a cop how many crimes are not reported.
Oh my God, you would not even believe the stuff that goes on. It's bad. It's bad right now. Crime is really bad right now.
So now I'm gonna just skip the next part because it was when Trump was talking about how the lawfare and everything, which is fine. I think he should bring that up.
He absolutely should. Listen, he has a legitimate gripe in that way. He does, but it's not the point of what we're talking about here, though.
No, it's not.
We'll do one on lawfare. We'll talk about actual lawfare, what it really looks like with Trump and with just overall with candidates.
Right, and then she went into a thing how she responded to that by the Supreme Court just gave presidents immunity, and God knows what he'll do if he becomes president and all of that. So that was just a little bit of nonsense. And all right, so let's get back to the next question.
Yeah.
Okay, so then Linsey Davis says, Vice President Harris. And this is why I don't understand why everybody says they weren't holding her accountable. From the first question on, and now this one. Vice President Harris, in your last run for president, you said you wanted to ban back fracking. Now you don't. You wanted mandatory government buyback programs for assault weapons. Now your campaign says you don't. You supported decriminalizing border crossings. Now you're taking a harder line. I know you say your values haven't changed, so then why have so many of your policy positions changed?
Good question.
Yes.
Yeah, good question.
Yeah. So, I don't understand the whining. That I mean, I do get the fact checking. It annoyed me too. I don't think that's their job as moderators to fact check. I don't like it.
No, it's not their job to fact check.
The candidates should be fact checking each other.
Exactly. And the moderators should be trying to kind of elicit a response to the question they're asking.
But I heard Sean Hannity going on and on last night how they never asked her about fracking. They never asked her about this. Yeah, they did.
No, they did. They did. And
it was the liberal one, too, because David Muir's not really that bad. Linsey Davis is, and she's the one who... She's
definitely far more, yeah.
And she's the one who asked it. But I'm going to read it again just for all you out there who think Trump got, was so picked on and everything. Vice President Harris, in your last run for president, you said you wanted to ban fracking. Now you don't. You wanted mandatory government buyback programs for assault weapons. Now your campaign says you don't. You supported decriminalizing border crossings. Now you're taking a harder line. I know you say your values haven't changed, so then why have so many of your policy positions changed? That is a tough-ass question. Good for you, Linsey Davis. Sorry, I can't deal with the whining. This was fair. This was fair.
I think it was a solid question.
And then of course
it was a fair question for a candidate that has changed her mind on all these policies.
Yes, yeah, she did, right?
She did.
I mean, we have it on tape.
Trying to play the middle now,
Yeah. Which, like we said in another video, is normal, right? You go towards the center, but this is not going towards the center, Mike. This is a complete reversal of policy.
For her,
yeah. For her.
Well, she was like the ultra progressive, right? When she ran the first time and got less than 1% and dropped out before Ohio.
So, do you remember her answer to that?
Vaguely, somewhat. She kind of danced around a bit, and I don't think she really said anything.
This is when she brought up how she had a middle class upbringing, and Trump got handed $400 million from his father.
Oh yeah, and he was like, it wasn't that much. I mean, she was not brought up middle class. First of all, she went to private school. She was not middle class in any way, shape, or form. She was never middle class. That's for one, And secondly, however much money Trump's father gave him, who gives a shit?
Who gives a shit? Exactly.
Who cares?
And Trump could have just said, you know what? Here's what I would have said, something like this, if I was Trump. Yeah, I love my father. My father was a good man, and I'm very lucky that I was able to have this opportunity. Now I want to make sure that everybody in America has the same opportunities that I was blessed
missed
enough
opportunities.
To have,
They kept making it personal digs and jabs, and it wasn't really.
Yeah.
It was so many personal jabs and so many digs, and it just come on.
So then Trump said, was following up on what the moderator didn't, and said that she changed Her policies, at least 12, 14, 15 different policies. I don't know how he has that number, but I guess he was trying to say a lot. Like, she was big on defund the police.
She was.
Yeah, well, then she says that's not true, right? But it was true.
It was
and
true,
then he brought up what happened in Minnesota, and, that was good. That was fine.
He got some good jabs in there on those, but I mean, it still, again, it should have been more about other things. And
see, I think
there's too many missed opportunities.
I think maybe, there were 3 or 4 times there where Trump did a really good job, right? But
Sure.
I think what happens with him is that his antics overshadow those. So what do people remember?
Because it
they remember
distracts,
the other
right?
things.
Because the bombastic craziness distracts from the actual, clear, concise. Yeah, absolutely.
But again, back to what I was saying before, I just don't see that big of a problem with the moderators here. I just don't. All right, so David Muir's next question. He says, we have an election in just 56 days. And this is the one I think that pissed a lot of people off. I want to talk about the peaceful transfer of power, which, of course, as we all know, is the cornerstone of our democracy and your role as president in Christ. Mr. President, on January 6th, you told your supporters to march to the Capitol. You said you would be right there with them. The country and the world saw what played out on the Capitol that day. The officers coming under attack, aides in the West Wing say you watched it unfold on television and in the Oval Office. You did send out tweets, but it was more than 2 hours before you sent out a video message telling your supporters to go home. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day? See, I don't find that so bad. He just said, is there anything you regret about, because he didn't lie about anything. It was a few hours before he put out the video message. Yeah, I understand David Muir was trying to frame it in a way to make Trump look bad, obviously.
No, he's obviously trying to make him look bad,
but I thought it was a fair question. Do you regret anything that you did that day?
What I don't like about the question is quite simply, it's enough already. We've had enough already.
Oh, I agree. Yeah.
Come on. It's old. Listen, January 6th shouldn't have happened. It was ridiculous and stupid. There shouldn't have been. Honestly, before that even happened that day, when they had put out there was going to be a rally in D.C. on January 6th, I remember turning to Lauren and a bunch of people I work with or anything else. I said, that's a bad idea.
Really?
It's just a bad idea.
Why'd you think that?
Because you're bringing all these people together in one place where they're certifying the vote and all this shit was going on. It was a contested
you're looking at
vote.
it like a cop.
Exactly, because I'm thinking emotions are going to be high, right?
My ass
People
is
are
killing me
scared.
again, by the way. Yeah,
People are scared. You got to tell your boyfriend to take it easy on it.
Easy.
People are scared. People are frustrated. People are upset. And you're bringing millions of them together in this one place where, here's the central point that all their frustration is taken out on. There was just too much opportunity for it to go sideways. And what happened? It went sideways.
I got to tell you, Mike, I didn't see that. I thought it was actually great. I was watching at home. What do they call that area there where they had the rally?
On the rotunda or something, right on there. Or
it's not called the rotunda. It's something else. But it's right in front of the White House.
The Capitol grounds. Or I can't. I know what you're talking about.
I can't remember the name of it. No, it was actually by the White House. It wasn't by the Capitol, where Trump was giving his speech and.
That's right. Yes, because it was by the White House and they marched over to the Capitol.
So I actually really was. I was watching it. I had to go to work, but I was watching it, and I thought it was great. I thought it was a lot of people coming to Washington D.C. to let themselves be heard. And I know you and I disagree on the whole election stolen stuff and everything, but I really liked it. I thought it was great. And I went to work kind of happy. I'm like, all right, this is great. Trump supporters are finally, coming out in large numbers, and they were peaceful. They're just waving flags. And then when I got to work, everybody's talking about, did you see what happened? Did you see what happened? Did you see what happened? Like, what happened? And then all of a sudden, I see the visual of what's going on in the Capitol. It was asinine. It was not an insurrection.
No, not even.
But it was asinine.
It was ridiculous. It was ridiculous. It should not have happened.
I agree, but I disagree with you there. I thought it was a great thing at first, but you're looking at it like a cop. I get it.
I just saw potential for how it could go sideways.
Yeah.
And I also saw potential for I still have potential for how it could be used by groups people who would maybe want to make the MAGA movement look bad, whatever.
Which is what happened.
Is exactly what happened. And I mean, but again, I've worked those kinds of cases and I've seen those kinds of things in other places, so I kind of had a bit of a foreknowledge.
I guess. I see your point. I mean, you're looking at it like I wasn't looking at it like a cop.
Well, no, because you were you're probably frustrated. Everybody was frustrated. We were all frustrated with the election at that point. We were all upset, and we wanted to be able to get that voice heard. Absolutely, I thought it was a beautiful sight, seeing all those people there waving the flag, and everything was peaceful. But then by the time I got to work, and all that shit was happening at the Capitol, I don't think the question was unfair. Do you regret anything about what you did or didn't do that day? I just don't like the fact that why is this part of the debate? Yeah, I don't think it's an unfair question necessarily, but I think that's like a question you asked during like maybe an interview.
Yeah.
Not for a debate. And I
No.
mean, because at that point, bringing that into a debate, all you're doing is opening the door for her to come in and try and say something stupid.
Exactly.
That's really what you're doing. You're just baiting the hook for her to come in and say something stupid.
I agree.
And it just wasn't necessary.
So I kind of have two things. Like, I don't think it was a terrible question.
No, but
I
not,
don't think
not the right place and time for it.
Yeah. But, Mike, he should have expected that.
Well, you got
Did he not think there was going to be a January 6th
You have
question?
to know that that's coming. You have to know that's coming. You have to know that's coming.
He does.
You have to know that's coming. You got to know that they're going to try and blast you on that. That's the thing they're trying to hang on his neck every single day. It's like every other, impeachment hoax they try to throw at him. The Russia stuff and all the other stuff they throw at him,
But, Mike, he had to know the question was coming. He lost his shit. He started going on, and then David Muir, said, but you were president. You were watching it unfold. It's a very simple question as we move forward. Is there anything you regret about that, what you did on that day? Yes or no? So, again, I don't think it's a bad question. I think Trump handled the question badly because he should, and I agree with you, it shouldn't have been a question.
No, but he should have been able to answer more succinctly. Yeah, he shouldn't have been.
Yeah, he had to have been prepared.
He took the bait on it. I mean, that's what happened with that. He took the bait on it, and I didn't like the answer he gave. I didn't like his response to it at all. I felt like it was just not good at all. It looked bad.
Nancy Pelosi thing and all of that, but
I mean,
I don't think he's wrong, by the way.
No, he's not. It's factually accurate. They were responsible for security. She is on video claiming that yes, it was my responsibility. I mean, she's not wrong in that. But again, it's just it's out of context. It shouldn't be in this environment where we're in a debate. Right. And B, he just he got upset about it, and it just looked bad. I wasn't the best part. I just wasn't happy with that part of it. But I mean,
But I agree with you. I mean, it didn't belong in the debate, but it was there. But I don't think it was a terrible question. And again, I think
it's a great question for an interview.
Yeah, but this is part of debate prep, right? You try to anticipate, because you can't know, right? So you got to try to anticipate what sorts of things are they going to ask me. He had to know that they're going to ask something about January 6th. And he should have had a canned answer.
I mean, you got to know that there's these certain things they're going to go after you for, right? Your 34 convictions or whatever. January 6th, the Russia stuff, whatever. They're going to try and sneak some of that stuff in there somewhere to kind of try and tag you with it, and that's what they're going to try and do. So you got to kind of be prepared for that and understand that and realize, like, okay, that might come up, so here's how I'm going to address that, Yeah,
but he just went on with the what we can only call a word salad, but it is what it is.
He should have been much more prepared for that.
So David Muir's next question. We talked immigration here tonight. I do want to focus on this next issue for both of you because it really brings it into focus. Truth is, these times we're living in, Mr. President, for 3.5 years after you lost the 2020 election, people falsely claimed you won. So, again, baiting him.
100% baiting him. And then Dave, I know this question, right?
Yeah, it was about the whisker. You lost by a whisker.
You lost by a whisker, and Trump's response was it was sarcasm.
Trump's first response was, "I said that." You don't remember that?
Oh, that's right.
Like he couldn't even remember he said that.
Yeah, I mean, but when he's talking it's David Muir's kind of a shithead on this one. So he's taking Trump's statements out of context, right? Completely out of context. B, Trump was saying them sarcastically. It was at rallies,
I didn't think. No, that was in an interview, Mike.
Was that an interview? Yeah, I remember him saying it at a rally or whatever, and he said sarcastically, and you had the crowd laughing. I didn't see the interview with him.
I saw it in an interview, and I think I even brought it up in one of our videos. No, he said, how Trump talks, right? He goes, a whisker. Goes like that. So he did say it. I didn't think it was sarcastic.
Like I said, it was an interview.
But I don't know who David Muir is to be the arbiter of what's sarcastic and what's not. But what should Trump have... Again, Trump had to know that this was going to come up, the claims about the 2020 election being stolen. How would you have advised Trump to answer that question in the debate? Not if it was at a rally or something like that. In the debate last night, if you were advising Trump and you say, Mr. President, they're going to ask you something about the 2020 election... what would you think he should say?
I would simply have said, look, we disputed the election. We obviously didn't, cause any insurrection, whatever. We didn't do anything about it. But we have significant amounts of evidence to show that what we're saying is most likely the case. But we were never given an opportunity in the courts to actually present this evidence and have it heard in a proper manner and put out in a proper manner. But that's in the past. That's done. 2020 is over. We have to focus on now. So here's where we're at. We're focused on now. So let's go forward from now.
Yeah, I would agree with the second part of what you said. I think if he would have said the stuff about, we couldn't get it in front of the court and all that, so I think it would have just led to more back and forth.
Well, it's factually true, though.
Either way.
There's reams.
I get
I'm
it,
a detective. I'm big on evidence.
Mike, we've had that debate
reams
before.
Of it.
We're talking about how Trump,
reams of it.
How should Trump have answered?
Focus on now, right?
Yes,
so his whole response should have been just to focus on now, because like 2020.
Or even say, you know what? I just thought of this. Sorry. Yeah, focus on it and say, but when I get elected president, we are going to make sure that there is election integrity in this country. Something like that.
Even better.
Make a promise.
Yeah, I know he's spoken about that recently somewhere. I forgot where I saw it, where he was talking about, like, going forward with election integrity and like, kind of making sure the systems are actually, much more strictly, kind of controlled, or not controlled, but what's the word? I guess strict oversight, to make sure that nobody on either side is really trying to, put their finger on the scale.
So he could have, like you're always saying, like you've said a million times in the last two videos, if he focused on policy, right? What would your policy be with elections? And
that's always my answer for it, especially in a debate. Look, in a campaign, I know, and you have to have your moments, your pictures, your snapshots, your sound bites, or whatever. But realistically, campaigns are policy. People want to know what you're going to advocate for, what you're going to try and do, what you're going to do for them, right? So policy really should be 90%. That should be 90%. And this whole thing was more like jabs and why I'm great, why she's not great, why he sucks, why I'm great. Like they both just did all that nonsense. So.
And he took the bait. So again, I'm not disagreeing.
Again, he took it again. Yeah, he did. He took it again, and he went into something that he shouldn't have gone into.
So the moderators, yes. I agree the questions should have been different, but he had to have expected this rather than just whine about it after the fact. He didn't have good answers.
No, I mean, look, if he really wanted to address it the way he addressed it, he could have said, look, you know what? It was said sarcastically, maybe it didn't come off that way, but not important. Right now, what we're focused on is winning this election that we're in right now, and then we'll work on election integrity and bringing back, electoral systems that actually are very much, strong and very much protected and with more oversight. And
I think that's perfect, Mike.
Yeah, something along those lines. Like, again, right? Me and you both know, campaigns are policy, right? That's really what drives things. Look at Reagan Carter, right? You had a bad Carter presidency, inflation, everything was crazy. And it kind of primed the deck for Reagan to come in. And Reagan was calm, deliberate, and very much focused on policy. And what did he do? He crushed him. I mean, just crushed him.
Yeah,
Trump has that same opportunity right now to crush him.
I don't ever remember Reagan once in that debate saying, he's the worst president ever.
He didn't have to. He just spoke the policy.
Spoke the policy. That's it.
Because policy wins.
The truth is the truth, right?
Policy wins. Listen, policy wins.
All right. So Lindsey Davis's next question was about foreign policy, and here's where, we are running kind of long here, but I don't think these questions were unfair. We'll just do one, and then we'll talk about the answers more. So Lindsey Davis says, I almost say Lindsey Graham every time I say this.
Take a drink.
Turning now to the Israel-Hamas war and the hostages who are still being held, Americans among them. Vice President Harris, in December you said Israel has the right to defend yourself, but you added it matters how. Saying international humanitarian law must be respected, Israel must do more to protect innocent civilians. You said that 9 months ago. Now an estimated 40,000 Palestinians are dead, nearly 100 hostages remain. Just last week, Prime Minister Netanyahu said that there's no deal in the making. President Biden has not been able to break through the stalemate. How would you do it? That's, again, a tough question to Harris, right? What would you do?
Yeah,
she
right in the
even
crosshairs.
Said, what your boss is doing is not working.
Yeah, you're in the crosshairs. Here you go.
Right.
Absolutely.
So I don't
good
find...
Question.
Great question. You know, I think these are good, hard questions that they asked her. Now, again, of course, she danced around it and didn't answer it, but that's not the point. Now, we're running out of an hour here, so... Let's talk a little bit about the foreign policy, because that's you and I. We kind of focus on that a lot. Yeah. I wish that they had, like they did in some other years, where they have multiple debates where one's just about domestic policy, one's about foreign policy.
I agree. Yeah.
But I guess they're worried that there might not be another debate.
Yeah.
I think they should have spent more time on foreign policy than they did, and not on January 6th and
it was so much wasted time.
2020 election and all of that.
So much wasted time.
Trump, again, It never would have happened if I was president. I'm going to solve it while I'm president-elect. I'm going to stop it in 24 hours.
Yeah.
A blown opportunity there.
Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt.
You know? Because this is... Look, the Israel-Hamas war is bad. I don't think that that's got a chance of leading into World War III, because this stuff flares up there, every few years. The Ukraine-Russia war could turn into World War III.
Oh, without a doubt.
Before we're done with this video.
Yeah, without a doubt. Without a doubt.
And I didn't just... No answer from Trump that was coherent. Just, again, I'll get it solved. I know them both. They love me. I love them. Blah, blah, blah. Never would have happened if I was president. It's blown opportunity there.
Yeah.
I thought. But
I do too. Listen, I didn't like either of their responses to it. She danced around it completely. With
oh, my God.
Nonsense.
It was horrible answer.
Political nonsense.
Yes.
And his was just, his own cheerleading kind of stuff.
Because she gave that crap that Russia's going to, we have to stop them or they're going to, take over the world, right, in Europe.
Russia's not invading anybody else. Russia just wants
They can't even get in more than 20% into Ukraine. They're going to take over NATO?
Stop. They're not going anywhere. Russia's not going anywhere,
Of course not.
Russia saw an opportunity, right, to take back what they feel is theirs originally anyway, which... That's debatable, but, whatever. But they saw an opportunity, that's about it. It's not going past Ukraine. The problem with the Ukraine-Russia war and where World War III might come into play is you have all these warmongering psychopaths and NATO people and everybody else that are trying to push for a frigging world war.
Well, Mike, that's what this is about. It's not even about the land and the historical stuff. If there would have just been a statement that Ukraine will be a neutral country,
that would have been
there never would have been an invasion.
No, but they don't want that. They want the war because that's what these warmongering psychos make their money on.
Right. Well, I mean, right from the back, because she talked about her trip to see Zelensky a couple of days before the invasion.
That must have been a
if you remember that trip, Mike, she promised while Russian troops were amassed on the border.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to de-escalate.
Yeah.
She doubled down. Yeah. And promised that Ukraine will be in NATO.
3 days later, they invade. Right. And all hell breaks loose. And Trump's not wrong about the numbers, though, on this. Millions of people are dying. Without a doubt, millions of people are dying.
Well, I think millions of people are being, if we talk about death...
it's not
casualties.
direct. We're not talking about direct combat deaths, right? There's probably significant combat deaths.
People are displaced.
But the problem with the war is you displace every bit of the infrastructure. You displace every bit of the ability to kind of supply structure.
Displace
people, and that leads to a lot of collateral deaths. So he's not wrong about the millions of people dying. He's absolutely right about the millions of people dying. And I liked his response in that whole thing where he said, I would stop the war. I want to save lives. I think that was probably the most heartfelt response we've seen.
Well, Mike, both of us have two sons. I don't know about you. I'm not. I don't want one of mine going and fighting so that Ukraine could be in NATO.
No, absolutely not. I don't want my sons, my daughters, anybody fighting. I don't want to see anyone dying like that. Look, I've been to war, right? I've seen war. And as ugly as you. It doesn't look anything like what people think it looks like. It's not some movie you saw. It's not some video game you played. It is a very, very visceral, real thing, and it is very, very ugly, and most people will never understand. It needs to stop. It does. It absolutely needs to stop. Yeah. It does.
This war needs to be settled, and this is why, listen, I don't care what Trump does, I'm voting for him, and the main number one reason I'm voting for him is because I honestly do believe Harris will continue with Biden's policies, and I know the way it works with new presidents and presidents who are accused of being weak. They're the ones who wind up trying to overcompensate.
Right, and go and pushing even further into it.
And I do think, look, I don't know, maybe this is inevitable. Who knows? I don't know. You just never know. But I do believe Trump will try to get this settled, and it has to be settled. And I'm sorry, if Ukraine has to lose a little bit of land, they have to lose a little bit of land, because are you willing to say, everybody out there says, well, why should they lose land? They shouldn't. Russia was wrong for invading, we're going to just talk bottom line. But are you willing 100%. To send your children to go die to protect the Donbass?
A region, mind you, Luhansk, Donbass, regions that have been fighting for over 14 years to be repatriated back into Russia against Ukraine. And now all of a sudden it matters? 14 years before this, it didn't matter.
And again, we instigated
Obama was president, and he sent blankets and some medical supplies, and not much of that even. But all of a sudden now it matters? No, absolutely not. Come on.
No, and remember what Obama said. He said this is much more important to Russia than it is to us.
Of course.
And, you know, for
And
whatever
he
you want to
wasn't
say,
wrong.
he wasn't wrong.
No,
he wasn't wrong at all. And look, we did a couple of Ukraine videos already, I guess, but this has to be
It
solved.
looms large because
Yeah.
it can be a very big trigger for, as we all see in history, whatever, a world war, honestly.
Yes, yeah, and you know, everybody always thinks the wars are going to be we're going to be home by Christmas, right? That's always
No,
the
absolutely
refrain.
not. No.
They take on a life of their own, but Trump's answers have to be better than I'm going to get this solved as president-elect, and it never would have happened if
Policy.
I was president.
How are you going to do that? Let's get them to the table.
Right.
I'm going to impose sanctions on Russia. I'm going to cut off the money to Ukraine. I'm going to tell them both, sit the hell down. Let's get this thing sorted and be done. And that's
Bingo.
it.
Speaking of being done,
Let us know what you thought about the debate. Really want to hear from you.
and the moderators, because that was really the point here. Let me ask you, now
the
that
moderators,
I
yeah.
read those questions to you, and we're not like seeing it with, you know, our passions flying and everything, has your mind changed at all, or
No, I kind of
No?
still feel the way I did. It's not that I get passionate about, like, I feel like my guy's being attacked. You know, I don't do that fanboy stuff at all. But you could definitely you could clearly see bias in the way they conducted themselves. David Muir is definitely better than Linsey was, but even still, there was bias there, and there was the gotcha kind of stuff there, and there was some other, like, you know, baited hook kind of stuff that to me was like the January 6th thing, right? It was just unnecessary. I thought it distracted from the overall,
I agree.
you know, feel of everything. It just made it that much more juvenile. I mean, listen, you know, Harris and Trump both kind of did their part in making this whole thing juvenile and a hot mess. But the moderators should have been the ones that kind of clean it up, hopefully, and bring it back to some semblance of better.
Yeah, it's called moderating.
Right, and they didn't. They kind of joined in, and that's what I think the real sentiment for me was. They kind of joined in it, and it was just a mess.
But be honest with me, Mike. When you were watching last night, did you realize how tough those questions were that they were asking Kamala Harris?
Yeah, no, I thought they
Oh,
were
you
good
did?
questions. Yeah, I listened to it. I was listening for her responses. I was hoping to actually hear a real response.
Because all I kept hearing on TV this morning is how they didn't ask her any tough questions. They let her slide. They didn't hold her
All
accountable.
the talking heads are going to do what they need to do to fill their airtime with the people that love them. So they do what they do. But that's why I don't like the talking heads much.
I thought the
You know,
questions to both of
That's
them were
why
good questions.
you've got to come to the dirt road and have these conversations, because we're not going to do the constant nonsense like this. We're going to actually have these real, honest conversations. And we want to hear the real, honest responses. And we're not afraid of left, right, whatever. We want Americans and regular people to get on here and talk, and just talk, have these civil conversations. We don't have to agree, but we're still going to love the fact that you're coming and having this conversation with us. We're still going to appreciate the fact that you're bringing us some intelligent argument and some good points, because you guys have been making good points. We appreciate it. So we want you to come and have this conversation with us.
Absolutely.
You know?
Mike, let me ask you just before we close. I'm just interested in your thoughts.
Yeah.
Bias out of it, completely neutral.
Yes.
I'll ask you for both of them. If you were working for the Kamala Harris campaign right now after last night, would you advise her to do another debate? Yes, no, and why?
Yes, I probably would tell her to do another debate.
Why?
Because she was practiced, she was polished, she was pretty well. She handled herself pretty well. She didn't answer anything directly, but that's kind of what they want in that whole thing. So I would tell her, yes, absolutely, she should definitely do it again.
If you were
and I would just
advising
make
Trump?
sure that you drilled it, in. I would advise him to do another one again, but I would
Why?
advise him to go back to the Biden debate that he did, where he was calm and measured and direct and kind of like succinct with his answers.
So if you work for either
I would
campaign,
drill that.
you would
drill
think,
that in.
So you would
I
think,
think they both need an opportunity to showcase their strengths more to the middle. They're fighting for the middle, and neither one of them really. I don't think either one of them really captured any votes last night. If that makes
Okay.
any sense, and I think they still have that opportunity to catch those middle votes, but they need to really show their stronger sides and their abilities.
So if you were working on either one of their campaigns, you'd advise them to.
Yeah, I would, but I
don't know.
But I would tell them both, like, I think, like I said, I think she was prepared. Like, she surprised me. I'm not gonna lie. I expected, my expectation of her was very low. So,
Everybody's was.
Absolutely, 100%. But she did. She came pretty strong. So
let me play devil's advocate then, because I really don't know what I
Sure.
was. So if I was advising Kamala Harris, I might say, you know what? You won that thing. You exceeded expectations. You nailed them. Don't do another debate. And if I were advising Trump, maybe I'd tell him not to do another debate, because I don't want him losing his shit again.
yeah, well, he definitely flubbed it. And I didn't really see. They both had great jabs in there. She had some really good jabs on him. He had some good jabs on her. But, like, realistically, I didn't see a winner, because I don't think anybody spoke about anything real, really. I mean, there was some, like, moments, and I liked his closing. I thought his closing was pretty strong.
His closing was. I didn't want to read it because we're running over time.
Yeah, the closing was strong. Definitely go back and watch that or read that. It was very strong.
I thought the closing was his best moment.
Yeah,
and,
definitely. It was his strongest moment. Yeah.
But, look, it is what it is at this point. I don't know that many minds are going to be changed from this point forward,
definitely
to be honest
not.
with you. So.
Look, you're fighting for the middle. They both missed an opportunity to grab some of those votes from the middle last night. They really did.
Yeah.
So they should definitely get together again, but this time do it in a much more adult, normal fashion and actually talk about policy.
Yeah, I would hope so. But,
let us know what you think. We really look forward to hearing your comments and
subscribe
reading them and seeing what they're saying.
We got to get monetized because I need a more comfortable chair. My ass is killing me.
We're going to get him a better chair. But subscribe, comment, share, get in the conversation. All right? Thanks so much for tuning in, guys. We love you. We really appreciate it all. And we'll see you on the next one.
Night.
Good night, guys.